As the first checkered flag of the 2026 Formula One season waved at Albert Park, Mercedes' legendary Silver Arrows declared an absolute and staggering victory in one of history's largest regulatory shifts. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli securing a 1-2 finish looked at first glance like a return to Mercedes' glorious hybrid-era dominance. However, a massive shadow of doubt was cast over this triumph from the very first lap. Beneath the Mercedes engine cover lay an engineering masterpiece or a blatant cheat, according to half the paddock that exploited a cunning loophole in the FIA regulations, leaving rivals fuming with rage. While George Russell hoisted his trophy on the podium, representatives from Ferrari, Audi and Honda were practically camping at the FIA technical delegate's door, sparking a revolt against the thermal expansion trick in the Mercedes engine. Today we are declassifying how Mercedes reached that mysterious 18:1 compression ratio, the 3/10 ghost advantage, and this technical war that will fundamentally alter the course of the 2026 season. If you're ready, we're diving into the paddock's most granular, secret and dangerous leaks. This isn't just a race recap, it's the story of how an empire was built despite the rules. The 2026 engine regulations strictly cap the compression ratio at 16:1 in the name of sustainability and cost control. The goal was to limit internal combustion engine ICE output and emphasize the hybrid systems. However, Mercedes engineers at Brixworth realized the FIA only tested this rule on cold or ambient temperature engines before the car even hit the track. This is where the trickery, or brilliant engineering, begins. Mercedes utilized specific smart materials in the cylinder head and piston crowns that, once the engine reached operating temperature on track, underwent thermal expansion to millimetrically reduce the clearance volume. The result? The legal 16:1 ratio that passes the cold test skyrockets to exactly 18:1 in the heat of battle. This thermal manipulation grants Mercedes an additional 40 horsepower, 30 kilowatts that no rival possesses. On the long Albert Park straights, that translates to exactly 0.3 seconds of free speed per lap. Even Ferrari's famous Macarena Wing was left breathless on the straights against this Mercedes engine genius and ghost power. When rivals spotted this gap in the GPS data, the paddock turned upside down. The race's greatest visual spectacle, and the moment that brought Ferrari fans to their feet, came via Charles Leclerc's incredible launch. While Mercedes drivers George Russell and Kimi Antonelli sat anchored to the grid, struggling with battery management and turbo spool-up, Leclerc rocketed from fourth to snatch the lead into turn 1. Leclerc dubbed this sudden burst of power the mushroom boost, a nod to Mario Kart. Although Ferrari's 350 kilowatts hybrid power worked flawlessly in the opening meters, this advantage was merely an illusion. Mercedes' cunning engine edge and superior long-term efficiency in battery software neutralized Leclerc's glorious start within just a few laps. Russell summarized their cold-blooded strategy, saying, "We had zero battery at the line, it was terrifying, but our energy cycle during the race was far more refined than our rivals." Ferrari won the start, but Mercedes answered with their technological grey area genius across the rest of the track. Ferrari's biggest enemy in Melbourne wasn't Mercedes' speed, it was the horrific indecisiveness on their own pit wall. The virtual safety car periods, triggered by Isaac Hadjar's engine failure on lap 12 and Valtteri Bottas's Cadillac breakdown on lap 18, were the true turning points of the race. The Mercedes strategy team reacted with the speed of a video game, pitting both drivers for fresh rubber in a perfect double stack. However, Ferrari made a decision that shocked the world by keeping Leclerc and Hamilton out. This strategic catastrophe caused the Ferrari cars to literally sandpaper their tires on the scorching Melbourne asphalt. Hamilton's fury was audible over the radio as he screamed, "Why didn't we pit? This is a disaster. We are not doing that again." To his team, the Mercedes drivers, on fresh tires and with their ingenious engines, pulled a 15-second gap, effectively erasing Ferrari from the lead fight. While Maranello suffered tactical paralysis, the Silver Arrows had already secured the podium with their illegal but unpunishable power. The burning question many fans and rival team principals are asking, if Mercedes cheated, why wasn't George Russell disqualified? The answer is hidden in F1's infamous and dangerous grey areas. FIA technical delegates are currently mandated to measure engines only in a cold ambient state, according to current protocols. On March 8, 2026, Mercedes passed this cold test at 16:1 without any issues. While the FIA admitted that Mercedes drifted to 18:1 once the engine hit 130 degrees Celsius on track, violating the spirit of the regulations, they could not apply a retroactive penalty because the rules were tied to the specific legal measurement protocol active that day. This goes down in history as a legal but unethical success, much like the 2009 double diffuser or the 2020 DAS system. To close this massive technical loophole, the FIA announced that from June 2026, engines will be subjected to hot measurements. Essentially, Mercedes exploited a legal gap with brilliant ruthlessness and kept their win, but in the eyes of their rivals and Lewis Hamilton, this victory carries deep moral scars. Coming from 20th on the grid to finish 6th with a monumental drive, Max Verstappen was the unhappiest man in the paddock. Verstappen described the driving dynamics of the 2026 cars as awful, and said that for a modern F1 driver, constantly lifting and coasting to recharge the battery is humiliating. "I'm a racer, not an energy manager," he shouted, rebelling against 2026's complex hybrid structure. Lando Norris echoed this, stating that F1 moved from the best handling cars in history, 2021 to 2025, to ones that are emotionally empty, heavy, and draining. Drivers argue that the massive electrical torque and heavy batteries have caused the cars to lose their character. Yet, for the fans, it was the opposite. Thanks to lower downforce, we witnessed the most real wheel-to-wheel action Albert Park has seen in years. While the drivers suffer in the cockpit, fans might have rediscovered that long-lost manual and high-risk racing spirit. The countdown for Mercedes' 40-horsepower cunning advantage has officially begun. The 130 degrees Celsius temperature test, which the FIA will implement in June after the 7th race of the season, will bury the thermal expansion trick of the Brixworth engineers in history. So, can Mercedes maintain its dominance after this date? The Silver Arrow's only ace isn't the engine. Their aero package, specifically that extreme downwash bodywork and energy management software, are also considered the best in the paddock. However, once they lose that massive 40-horsepower ghost power, they will be far more vulnerable to Ferrari's ingenious Macarena Wing and McLaren's surging race pace. The Australian GP was proof of how aggressively Mercedes interpreted the rules, but the real test starts once the FIA closes this technical hole. Mercedes' victory in this legal grey area has turned the paddock into a technical battlefield for the rest of the season. Hamilton and Ferrari are already waiting for that test in June. With the Australian Grand Prix weekend in Melbourne now behind us, we've seen the new order and Mercedes-AMG team's cunning technical genius in all its naked glory. While Mercedes turned their rivals' logistical and strategic blunders into opportunities, that alleged 40-horsepower gain from the thermal expansion trick will remain the season's biggest and most debated topic. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, allowing this so-called legal cheat, confirms that 2026 may be won, not just on the track, but also in engineering offices and even law firms. But the bigger question is this: where does innovation end and exploitation begin? Is Mercedes simply playing the game better than everyone else? Or are we witnessing the opening chapter of a technical arms race that could redefine the championship battle? Do you think Mercedes' grey area victory is fair, or is it slowly damaging the sport's image? And what about Scuderia Ferrari? How many more races will their strategy team throw away this season before something finally changes? Meanwhile, Max Verstappen's so-called anti-racing rebellion is adding another layer of tension to an already explosive championship narrative. Let's ignite the debate in the comments. Break down this technical apocalypse, the Mercedes engine controversy, and your expectations for the coming races from every possible angle. Stay tuned to F1 Perspective for the fastest, sharpest, and most detailed paddock leaks. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now. Make sure you're the one exiting the pits best prepared.